The Synod on the Family in Rome concludes amid controversy and ferocious debate among cardinals. The summary document of the first week's proceedings has caused a firestorm. Are long-established teachings on cohabitation and homosexuality changing in the Catholic Church? Editor-in-Chief of thecatholicthing.org, Robert Arroyo, joins us from Rome with the latest. And what of Cardinal Kasper's proposal to give divorced and remarried Catholics a fast pass to the sacraments? Later, the president of the Patristic Institute in Rome, Father Robert Dodaro, editor of that book by 5 cardinals critiquing the Kasper proposal, joins us in an interview. And finally, she's one of the world's top recording artists, selling over 22 million albums since her big break on Britain's Got Talent. She has the voice of an angel, my exclusive interview with Scotland's own Susan Boyle. The World Over begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Robert Arroyo, Father Robert Dodaro, and Susan Boyle are all straight ahead. She'll even sing for us. If you'd like to comment on tonight's program, send us a tweet at Raymond Arroyo or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. We've got a lot to cover. Let's get to it. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. As part 1 of the Synod on the Family wraps in Rome, the Vatican is backtracking on the contents of the publicly released working document that became a media sensation. The relatio, or report after the debate, is supposed to be a summary of the first week's discussion at the Synod. Among the statements causing a worldwide stir, support for allowing communion for divorced and remarried Catholics on a case-by-case basis, a recognition of the positive aspects of cohabitation and civil unions, and urging the acceptance and valuing of homosexual persons, as well as their gifts and qualities. Media outlets across the world suggested that those comments revealed a new openness and acceptance of gays and other issues in the Catholic Church. The reaction from cardinals in the Synod who had not seen the report before its public dissemination was swift. Many said it did not reflect the actual discussions in the Synod. Here is Cardinal Wilfred Napier of South Africa.
Has gone out, and it's not a true message that this Synod has taken up these positions, and whatever we say hereafter is going to be as if we're doing some damage control.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York had this to say when asked if he agreed with Cardinal Raymond Burke's suggestion that the working draft document should be scrapped and a new document created presenting church teaching.
Well, I think he's right. He's picked up on a sign that a lot of bishops, and I would include myself, feel that it needs some major reworking. But I can assure you that Cardinal Burke would be part of that enthusiastic unity in thinking anything we can do to welcome people into the church, anything we can do and to invite them to hear again, to hear the saving invitation and conversion of heart that comes from Jesus Christ, let's do it.
And more controversy for Cardinal Walter Kasper over comments made to a reporter. The German prelate, who's championed a plan to grant divorced and remarried Catholics the sacraments without an annulment, is being criticized for what some have described as racist comments. In an interview with Edward Penton, published in Zenit News, Cardinal Kasper dismisses concerns from his African counterparts with regard to homosexuality. The Cardinal noted that homosexuality is taboo in many parts of the world compared to the West. Then, referencing Africans, he said, quote, "They should not tell us too much what we have to do," end quote. Catholic commentators and bloggers have called the comments everything from stunningly insensitive to condescending and xenophobic. Cardinal Kasper has since denied making those comments. Zenit took the story down, but audio of the interview has now emerged, and apparently the Cardinal did make those comments. In a partially related story, following complaints that no African was on the report committee, Pope Francis on Thursday added Cardinal Napier to his hand-picked commission. that will prepare the final synod report. More on this wild and woolly synod and what it all means with Robert Arroyo in our next segment. And the Islamic State persecution of Christians continues in Iraq. Fides news agency is reporting that the jihadist militants have desecrated a 4th century Syriac Catholic monastery. The group has controlled the monastery since July. After expelling the monks, the terrorists burned ancient manuscripts, removed crosses, and sprayed graffiti near the Mar Bernam monastery. It's not the first time Christians have been persecuted. According to church historians, the church was said to have suffered greatly during the reign of a Muslim ruler in the last half of the 18th century. Meanwhile, government officials in Iraq will provide 25,000 prefabricated homes for Christians who have fled Mosul and the Nineveh plain in the wake of the Islamic State advance. The homes will be placed in the autonomous region of Kurdistan during the next 45 days. These homes are badly needed and just in time for winter. Meanwhile, the Islamic State propaganda against Christianity is intensifying. The jihadis' trademark, a black flag, was shown photoshopped atop the obelisk in the middle of St. Peter's Square. The cover story title, "The Failed Crusade." Inside, it threatens the conquering of Rome and the breaking of crosses. It goes on to urge Muslims to attack and kill every crusader possible, adding that it is lawful to kidnap the women of the infidels and use them as sex slaves. Italy's ANSA news agency reports that the Vatican stepped up security last month following Islamic State threats. And in Alaska on Sunday, a U.S. District Court judge, Timothy Burgess, ruled that the state's first-in-the-nation voter-approved measure protecting traditional marriage was unconstitutional. This just 2 days after hearing opening arguments. Passed in 1998, the constitutional amendment defined marriage as being between one man and one woman. Save for a last-minute intervention by the U.S. Supreme Court, Alaska will begin issuing marriage licenses for same-sex couples on Friday. And on Wednesday, Texas abortion clinics that closed under tough new restrictions began reopening after winning a reprieve at the U.S. Supreme Court. A 5-sentence ruling late Tuesday blocked parts of a sweeping Texas abortion law, which in effect led to the closing of all but 8 clinics across Texas. The ruling is only a suspension pending appeals. Without comment, the High Court set aside the state mandate that abortion facilities meet hospital-level operating standards. The court also exempted clinics in El Paso and McAllen from a requirement that doctors who perform abortions have hospital admitting privileges. And the number of women religious in the United States continues to fall. According to Georgetown University's Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, the number of American sisters has fallen below 50,000. The number represents a 100-year low and has steadily decreased since peaking at 181,000 in 1966. Some orders, however, are thriving. The top 6 drawing new vocations are all habited and considered, quote, conservative. 3 of the 6 are contemplative. Notable are the good sisters known as the Nashville Dominicans. They have grown by 60, or rather 76%, since 2000. When we return, editor-in-chief of thecatholicthing.org, Robert Arroyo, joins us from Rome. Just what is happening at this Synod on the Family, and what does it really mean? And later, Father Robert Dodaro, editor of the new book written by 5 cardinals, Remaining in the Truth of Christ. He joins us to take issue with Cardinal Kasper's proposal. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Don't miss this. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. The Synod of Bishops on the Family is drawing to a close at the end of the week, but actually it will go on for another year. This week, a draft document supposedly summarizing the first stage of the discussions was released. It suggested a shift in tone toward gays, cohabitating couples, and fueled talk that the Church might change the way it deals with divorced and remarried Catholics. Judging from the media frenzy, one would have thought Vatican III had been convened. Here to help us make sense of the confusion in the wake of this extraordinary synod, I'm joined from Rome by the editor-in-chief of thecatholicthing.org and an alumni of our own conclave and canonization cruise, Robert Royal. Robert, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you again, Raymond. We're sorry you're not here in Rome.
I know. Well, I was there at the start of it. You know, I can only take so much, Robert. I want to talk about this document itself. That mid-report, the report issued at the midway mark, that was supposed to be a summary of the conversations in this synod that have, by the way, been primarily closed to the press. You've been subjected only to the Vatican spokesman. That's your only source of real information. But I want to touch these two basic aspects of the report. It said there are positive aspects of civil unions and cohabitation. And then it said this. It said that homosexual people have gifts and qualities to offer to the Christian community. Are we capable, we the Church, of providing for these people, and that was later amended to welcoming these people, guaranteeing them a place of fellowship in our communities? Oftentimes they want to encounter a church which offers them a welcoming home. Are our communities capable of this, accepting and valuing their sexual orientation without compromising Catholic doctrine on the family and matrimony? What do you make of this, and who is responsible for this report?
Well, it's a very controverted passage for a variety of reasons. You know, it's just a truism to say that gay people, of course, like all of us, have gifts that we can give to others and maybe to the Church as well. It was interesting, a journalist asked the Archbishop who actually wrote that passage, and that's Archbishop Bruno Forte of Italy, was he saying, or was the passage saying, that homosexuals have gifts that come out of their homosexuality? And of course, that's the confusion here. It's not just that they're human beings who have gifts and we want to welcome. There's a difficulty that there seems to be a desire to welcome gayness in itself. And whether that was the intention, it certainly was how it was perceived. And it went out to the world as introducing a great confusion. Some people thought it was wonderful. It looked like a sea change for the Church. For others, it just seemed that they didn't know what the Church could possibly be saying by that.
Robert, a lot of the cardinals coming out of this meeting in the aftermath of this, and apparently there was a lot of objection instantly when it was read, and it was presented first to the media, then to the bishops. That's a rather peculiar trajectory. But I want to read this to you. This is Cardinal Pell and his analysis. He said, the question of communion for divorced and remarried Catholics is but the tip of the iceberg. In seeking to be merciful, someone to open up Catholic teaching on marriage, divorce, civil unions, homosexuality in a radically liberalizing direction, whose fruits we see in other Christian traditions. What are you hearing on the ground? How ferocious has this backlash been, and what's the takeaway?
Well, the term that's being used, as I think you know, Raymond, is gradualism. And gradualism is an idea that's been around a long time in the Church, and what it means is not that we gradually come to know the moral law. What it means is that human beings are imperfect, and of course we all strive in our lives to become more Christ-like, more perfect. But what seems to be the baseline in that language that you just read is that everyone basically is welcome, and that there's no real criticism of the way people are living their lives, that we just, you know, we have to work with people. Now, at a pastoral level, if it's your pastor or some priest that you know, or your confessor or a spiritual advisor, of course, all of that is long been part of the Church. The problem exists, I think, when it looks as if absolutely everyone in the world is somehow part of this gradualist process that some people, some of the bishops at the Synod are proposing. And I think I have to say that among gay groups and people cohabiting, there isn't a lot of interest in that kind of gradualism. And, and therefore, that's also why we got the pushback from at least 41 of the bishops.
Yeah. I want to get into something else here. And again, the Kasper proposal was the first sort of discussion point of this synod going in. This has been almost a year-long conversation. And now the conversation, it seems, has expanded. I want to play a little bite from you. Now, this is our own Edward Penton of the National Catholic Register. He interviewed Kasper, and he said this about those 5 reporters, and the Pope hand-picked 5 reporters to write summaries of the discussion of the Synod and the final report. This is what Kasper had to say of them.
I think the majority of these 5 people are open people and they want to go on.
Right.
At the end, man will do it.
Yes. But they will do it and they will have communion.
But the problem is also there are different problems in the different continents, in different cultures.
Yeah.
And Africa is totally different from West, right? The West, and also Asia is something, and then the Muslim countries. It's very different.
Yes.
Sensitive, especially about gays. You cannot speak about this with Africans and with Muslim people of Muslim countries.
Your reaction to that, and what impact are the Africans now playing in this synod?
Well, it's no secret that certain members of the Synod don't like the idea that Asians and Africans, who come from more traditional societies, obviously, want to get their 2 cents in about the larger view of marriage. We see a much softer view coming, or a more unfaithful view coming out of Germany and a few other places as well. Just today, it's quite interesting, it's just today that Wilfred Fox Napier, the Cardinal from South Africa, who was very good the other day, by the way, at the press briefing, was appointed to that drafting committee, as was Dennis Hart, who's the Archbishop of Melbourne in Australia. Two native English-speaking contributors, so that's added to the other 5. But a very interesting thing that Napier said was that a message went out when that draft came out on Monday, and it wasn't the true message, but it was the message. It was the one that, both in terms of the substance and in the terms of the way it was released, it sent out to the whole world a mistaken notion of what the bishops had been doing. And he actually used this word. He said, we find ourselves now so far behind in the media struggle that the situation is almost irredeemable, his word.
No, we played that earlier, and I want to share this a little bit with you and ask this question. And I mean, I guess it's a provocative one. When you hear comments like this from Cardinal Kasper, who has really been in the driver's seat driving this conversation since February, when he says the majority of these 5 people, the reporters, are open people who want to go on with this, it seems as if this idea, this notion of where the Church should go, is almost pre-cooked into the recipe here, that it was a predetermined outcome. Is that what you're hearing? Is that what you're seeing?
Well, there are, as you know, the sessions are not open, so there's no direct reporting about what's going on. But one hears that Cardinal Pell stood up and say this is being railroaded, this has to be moved in a different direction. One of the interesting things to me is that it seems that what we thought was going to be the most hot-button issue, namely, should communion be allowed to divorced and remarried Catholics who have not received an annulment, that issue seems to have almost entirely dropped away. And what instead has come to the fore is this much more broad gauge approach to thinking that there's even been a debate about these Italian terms, accogliere, to welcome people, accompagnare, to accompany people, camminare, to walk alongside people. So what started as what we thought was just a kind of a technical issue, and actually some of the Synod Fathers have said that the debate inside the room has been, the theologians have to work that out, and over the next year we'll figure out where we go with that. Actually, it's this larger orientation toward accepting people in a way that seems very unclear, that makes both bishops and priests and lay people quite nervous.
Yeah, no, well, last week in my interview with Cardinal Burke, he said beyond this issue of divorced and remarried Catholics and whether they should be admitted back to communion with a fast pass, if you will, without end running a annulment process, that the burning issues, the dark horse issues here, were going to be contraceptives and gay marriage and welcoming gays into the church, and all that apparently turned out to be true. Here's the big question. What role is the Pope playing in all of this? I mean, he handpicked these 5 reporters. He seems to be encouraging this debate, and it's a chaotic one. We have to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it was just today that it was announced that Cardinal Napier and Archbishop Hart were added, the 2 that I mentioned just a bit earlier. So, you know, in some ways it looks like the complaint that there are no Africans. I personally think Napier was splendid in that. I didn't see the segment that you played earlier, but he was absolutely splendid in the room the day that he came in. And I would like to think that he was appointed because of the quality of his intervention, but I'm afraid it's simply because they felt bad that there wasn't an African and then there needed to be somebody from Oceania. But there's very little talk about what the Holy Father has been doing. We do know that he saw the document, the relatio, before it came out on Monday. I know from a reliable source that it was delivered to him on Saturday. He returned it, having read it on Sunday. But you're right, it's a chaotic process. We just heard at the press briefing this morning that in addition to the 10 reports from the 10 small language groups, there are 700 requested modifications to a text that's about 7 or 8 pages long. So you can imagine, Father Lombardi said they're not even sure that they're going to be able to deal with those 700 modifications by Saturday night when the Synod is supposed to officially come to an end.
Final question, Robert, before we go. This is a 12-month process now that we're going to be looking at. What do you think happens in this intervening 12 months as there's a bit of a repose here between one synod and the final synod on the family?
Well, I think the most likely thing, I'm not saying that this is the best thing, I think the most likely thing is we're going to see something very much like a political campaign, where there are different factions, there are different parties that are going to be jockeying for position. It's unfortunate that we're now finding ourselves in these circumstances, but I don't see what else could possibly happen other than there's going to be this probably global sifting through of the things that we've been talking about these past few days. I don't know exactly where that's going to turn out, but I have to say some of my friends, some of my very best friends back in America have been counseling patients and calm, and all that is quite good. But I don't think it's a good idea for any of us who believe in traditional church teaching to just assume that the process is going to work out okay, that this is what happens when you have a large group that get together and try to sift through differences. I think that everyone is going to have to be very vigilant over the next 12 months. You should talk with your bishop, talk with your priests, get involved any way that you can, because this is a major turning point. I came, as you know, I said this to you several months ago, I was going to come. I had an intuition, not knowing what we've seen this past week, but I knew something was going to happen. And it's now clear that some people are actually saying at least it's good that we now clearly see where the battle lines are drawn in the global church.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about what they are, and everybody has made their viewpoint known. I guess the lingering question here is, what of Pope Francis? What is he to say? And we'll find that out in the coming days. Thank you, Robert Royal, and we'll be checking in with you. Hopefully you can join us next week. We're going to have a round table on the outcome of this synod, or this extraordinary synod. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, Raymond, good to be with you.
You can read all of Robert Royal's extensive analysis and reporting on the Synod on the Family by visiting thecatholicthing.org. Cardinal Walter Kasper has said in an interview this week that the majority of cardinals now support his proposal to return divorced and remarried Catholics to the sacraments without a long annulment process. Now, we extended several invitations to Cardinal Kasper, and he unfortunately turned those down for a one-on-one interview. At the center of his argument is a penitential path that's part of Orthodox Church teaching. Enter Father Robert Dodaro. He's the editor of the new book, Remaining in the Truth of Christ. It was written by 5 cardinals challenging the Kasper proposal. In our interview conducted in Rome, we talked with Father about this Orthodox approach, the so-called oikonomia, and the synod process. Take a look. Let's talk about this entire synod. Why do we need a synod? Now, what is Pope Francis after exactly? Are we reopening all of these teachings that I thought were settled under the reign of John Paul? Vis-a-vis the family, anyway.
Well, to a certain extent, yes, we are reopening questions that were settled under Pope John Paul II. How deeply or seriously we're reopening them has yet to be seen. I think Pope Francis wanted this idea of what the Orthodox Christians call oikonomia, which means mercy or taking care of household matters, kind of, you know, taking care of those who are weak and need some support. A dispensation, we might say in English. Right. Pope Francis wanted this idea to be studied. He said that on the flight from Rio de Janeiro to Rome at the end of the First World Youth Day that he presided at. And this wasn't an idea that was original with him. This idea goes way back to the Second Vatican Council. And it was brought up during the council, not pursued very far, and then scholars started to look, Latin scholars, Western scholars started to look at the Orthodox tradition a little bit here and there.
Explain to people, this is really at the very heart of Walter Kasper's proposal. It is the centerpiece, really, that he keeps holding up as a historical precedent. And he says, here the Orthodox have a way of dealing with the divorced and remarried. They give them a little period of penance, and then they're admitted back into communion.
That's right. So what Kasper's saying is, look, this tradition goes back to the early church, where there are representative figures who supported it, or at least admitted it as a possibility, and then it got taken up in the Eastern tradition. Why can't we, in the Western tradition, now look at this seriously?
But your book kind of explodes this.
It absolutely does. Yeah. First of all, the examples that he uses from the early church, we don't find to be well-grounded at all. A Canon 8 from the Council of Nicaea in 325, for example, depends on actually, it's a long explanation, I won't get into it all, but it depends on an interpolation made in a manuscript in the 19th century. It depends on what a word called digamoi means in English. Does it mean people who were married and then one partner died and the widow or the widower remarries, or does it refer to divorced and remarried people? Kasper maintains that it refers to divorced and remarried people. We've shown, the long-standing scholarship supports the other version. This is talking about widows and widowers who could then remarry after the death of the spouse.
And you also have the other argument there, which the Orthodox Church at the time was under the pressure of an emperor.
Well, this came later. This came later in the 9th, 10th centuries. In the earliest centuries, the two churches followed the same line, generally speaking, and resisted attempts by the emperors to impose divorce and second marriages on the church, resisted it actively, including the Eastern Church. Then later, during the Byzantine Empire, they fell under the pressure of Byzantine emperors and were unable to resist any longer. The history of the tradition in the Eastern churches develops from that political interference by emperors in the church's affairs. The Western Empire was able to resist that. The Pope, because of the papacy, the Catholic Church in the West was able to resist that kind of political pressure. There are episodes. You'll find episodes where this or that king or duke was
given a waiver.
That's right. These are anomalies, though. Our argument is you don't construct a parallel or alternative tradition out of anomalies. I tell my students at the university, there are stupid bishops in every century.
Can I quote you on that?
Please do, yeah.
Okay.
So bishops do things that violate norms that are outside of the pale, and we don't construct alternative traditions around them. We say, when they goofed.
Tell me, we are seeing a fractious, loud debate in public. Is this, historically speaking, par for the course?
If people are told that divorced, civilly remarried Catholics will be admitted to Holy Communion, then this is how it's going to play out. A young couple will go to their parish priest and say, well, we want to be married. Well, that's great. We have to do some marriage preparation, but that's great. Let's do some marriage preparation. And he organizes something, or he gets someone in his parish to organize something. And they're told during this, very sincerely, they're told, now remember, marriage is permanent. It's forever. It's until death do we part. And you have to mean those words. You can never, marriage will get tough, you'll have difficulties, you'll have struggles, but you never divorce because your marriage takes place in Christ. Your bond is in Christ. So you can't ever renounce it. You can't ever leave behind and marry another person. All right. The couple are stunned by this. They listen carefully. Yes, Father. Yes, Father. They leave the rectory. On the way home, the young man says to his girlfriend, my parents are divorced and remarried, and they go to communion. What's the big deal? Indissolubility of marriage is over.
Done. Cardinal Kasper writes about acknowledging, he says this is something that isn't really acceptable, the second marriage, but we've got to find a way to accommodate it. How does the church then, were one to embrace this notion, how do you regard the first marriage and the second marriage? Is it kind of a funky second-tier, caste system of, second and third wives? Are they considered something less than the first? How does that work?
I have no idea. I can't explain Cardinal Kasper to you because I don't understand him on this point. And he's making it stronger. In the last few days, he's actually said that there would be positive elements to this civil marriage. Positive elements that we ought to recognize as a church. Well, what about the first spouse who was left behind? What if she's a woman and she has children? And okay, he sees the kids, but how does where's the justice for her? For example, I was talking to a African student, and he said, our problem is Muslim men that want to convert to Christianity and have 4 wives and children with each one. What do we do with them? So I think this is much broader than the narrow
Western question,
Western middle class question, if I may, too, huh?
Yeah.
So I don't know that the synod will become stuck on this issue. The annulment question, though, it worries me because what we're trying to do is to assure both parties in the original marriage, both parties, that there never was a valid marriage bond. And sometimes in divorce cases, both parties believe that. They accept, that's right. We were too young, immature. We really didn't think this. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't intend, all right, fine. But sometimes one of the partners doesn't look back at the marriage that way. So it's actually a contested proceeding. Right. One partner wants the annulment, as it's called, declaration of nullity. The other one says, wait a minute, we had a valid marriage. Right. What the church is trying to do is set up a process that's absolutely objective, where there can't be favoritism or some kind of sentimentalism on the part of the tribunal, which, for reasons very understandable, wants to give these people a second chance and some hope, who may have grown up and kind of realized themselves, but at the same time, we have a responsibility in justice. And Cardinal Burke's essay in our book really, I think, clarifies that. And anyone who has any questions about the annulment process, should really read that and find out why he thinks the process we have in place now is the one that most guarantees objectivity and truth in the proceedings.
Tell me about Cardinal Mueller's contributions to the book. I mean, you have the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. This is the final word, if you will, on doctrine, weighing in 2 places in this book, really. Tell me about that.
Well, Cardinal Mueller doesn't address the oikonomia suggestion of Cardinal Kasper very much in this particular essay of his. He does in others, but not in this one. In this one, what he tries to do is to show how much pastorally the church already tries to do for divorced and remarried people, civilly remarried people, who are not able to receive Holy Communion because of the state of their second civil marriage. He cites Pope Benedict XVI's document, I think from 2007, Sacramentum Caritatis, in which Pope Benedict implored pastors, be they bishops or parish priests, to invite the civilly remarried into parish life, to invite them to Mass, to invite them to listen to the Word of God, to meditate on it, to talk to their parish priest, to seek counsel, to make spiritual communions, everything short of receiving Holy Communion, in an effort to make them not only feel welcomed, but actually be welcomed. It's Cardinal Mueller who brings that teaching, I think, to the fore and says, this is mercy. This is mercy, however, in accord with the words of Jesus Christ. We do not have the right to apply mercy in such a way as we contradict the teachings of Christ. That's Cardinal Mueller's essay.
There's no discontinuity between the teaching and the pastoral approach. It is actually in harmony.
Yeah, right.
And that point is really made throughout this book. Cardinal Kasper has already reacted to this work. He has said, just this week, I do not remember such a situation where in such an organized way 5 cardinals write such a book. It's a way that is done in politics, but it should not be done in the church. It's how politicians act, and I think we should not behave in this way in the church. Your reaction?
Cardinal Kasper's been on a one-man publicity campaign for his idea since February. Now, we could go earlier than that, because as you said, he's had this idea for years. But he's given interviews to American Catholic magazines. He's been on American radio stations talking about this book, this approach. Should he be the only one, the only cardinal, the only bishop allowed to speak out? Is that synodality? Is that collegiality? That's my reaction. We're just accepting the invitation that he put in his book, hoping that his book would contribute to further discussion. This is what discussion looks like.
Are you surprised that we're hearing so little about John Paul's vast family contributions in this area of Catholic teaching as we go into a synod on the family? I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Many of these people participated in the shaping of that teaching and document and series of documents. Are you stunned that we're sort of casting that aside?
I don't know what to say. I think it's a good question. But stunned, yes, but I don't know that they are really trying to do that. I think Cardinal Kasper has maybe lost sight of Familiaris Consortio, but was he really ever on side? I mean, so he's raising a question. Pope Francis has decided to give him space to do so. I respect that. I'm all for discussion, debate. Maybe we can rethink certain language. Maybe we ought to rethink certain new challenges that have arisen since Familiaris Consortio. I personally would be against any attempt to uproot, to change the teaching of Familiaris Consortio. But I think that some of those who support Cardinal Kasper don't think that that's what his proposal entails. What we're trying to do in our book is to show them that it does. It may not have occurred to them that that's what's going on. So we're trying to help them to see, from our point of view, honestly, this is what we think this is about.
Final question. Cardinal Kasper has alluded, and others, to the notion that this may be a renewal, if you will, a restart of the conversations had at Vatican II. And this may be a new opening to dialogue and the fulfillment of what many popes of the past had intended. Is that how you see this synod and what could come from it?
I don't know how to evaluate that statement of Cardinal Kasper's. I don't know what to make of it. What does he want to do in reopening the Second Vatican Council? I would like to see the doctrine of the Second Vatican Council followed, because our way of interpreting the question of Holy Communion for divorced and remarried Catholics is right out of Gaudium et Spes. It's right out of the documents of the Second Vatican Council. So I don't understand what he thinks we're trying to do here by reopening the issues of the Second Vatican Council.
Remaining in the Truth of Christ, Marriage and Communion in the Catholic Church is available at some bookstores and through the EWTN Religious Catalog. I want to remind you to visit my Facebook page. I have that Cardinal Burke interview from last week. Tens of thousands of you have viewed it, and I know many more will want to. It's there, as are the small group transcriptions, these discussions going on in the Synod. If you want the backstory, it's there on my website and on the Facebook page. When we return, the unlikely Scottish singing sensation who took the world by storm in 2009 on Britain's Got Talent, the life and faith of Susan Boyle, when the World Over Live returns. Stay right there.
Once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest is one of the most successful recording artists in the world. Since she announced her presence in 2009 on Britain's Got Talent, She sang I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, and boy, she floored the judges, including Simon Cowell, with her surprising angelic voice, proving you can't judge a book by the cover, and you shouldn't. Since then, she's sold over 22 million albums and is currently on her first concert tour in the United States. An overnight success? Hardly. The road to fame has not been an easy one for Susan Boyle. I sat down with her recently at St. Malachy's in New York City to talk about her unlikely career and the faith that made it possible. Susan, you grew up in a family of 9, an Irish Catholic family, obviously a big one. What was it like growing up in that family, and what did it teach you about faith?
Well, being the youngest member of 9, you very much have to fight for a position, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to fight quite a lot when I was at home, because there's so many of us, so many different personalities under the one roof.
Right.
And where faith came in, my mother and father were very strong Catholics, and we went to church every Sunday. And hold the obligations and things like that. And we had a good spiritual background.
I was struck reading your autobiography, The Woman I Was Born to Be. There were complications surrounding your birth, and the doctors suggested that your mother abort you. Tell me what happened.
But they weren't very sure whether or not both of us would be able to survive. And she was given that option, but being a staunch Catholic, she just wasn't having it. Plain simple as that.
She wouldn't hear of it. I love that you quote the doctors at the time, and someone said, "Don't expect much of Susan." Did that mark you at all? Did it leave any wounds on you?
Well, I was a few months old, so I couldn't really say anything. But as you get older and you get to know about things, you say, well, why should they actually play God and try and label me? They don't know how things are going to be. You know, and years later, I proved them wrong.
Were you always interested in music? I mean, you sang in choirs from the time you were 12. You continued to sing at the pubs, which we'll talk about in a moment. Music, was it always part of your life?
My mother and father had it. Everybody had it in the family, because there's always some element of music in the family. You know, so it's sort of infectious, really. You can't really avoid it.
And so you did it for joy. I mean, you did it because it was a natural outgrowth of your joy and your expression.
It was also a very natural way of expression as well, because being the way I was with Asperger's, being born with that means you have some difficulty in communication. So music was my way of communicating.
The Asperger's, you were just diagnosed with that in what, 2012? Not too long ago.
2012. So that's to put the record straight. It wasn't brain damage I had, but it's Asperger's.
The children called you Simple Susie in school, probably because of the Asperger's, the difficulty learning, or that particular type of learning. It must have been a great cross for you.
Well, children are cruel. When they grow up, they realize they've been wrong. You know, and I've gone on a lot better than them now, because I'm a bit older now. You know, people do that.
Did your faith help you overcome some of that bullying and some of that scorn?
Not just about the bullying, it's about life in general. You know, because if you don't have a faith, you've got nothing really to hold on to.
Let's talk for a moment about your mother. When your father Patrick passed away, you decided to care for your mother and cared for her, lived at home with her till she passed. What was that like? Why did you make that decision?
Well, I was the only one left in the house. But instead of going away and leaving her, you do the natural thing and you look after her. She was very frail, she was very sick at the time, so you just look after her. That's the kind of thing you would be expected to do, really.
You loved her intensely. What did she teach you? What did she give you that you still use and call upon today?
I like to think she's given me a good example in life, that she taught me the difference between right and wrong. You know, and that sort of stayed with me.
You've said in some interviews recently that you still feel she's with you, you still feel her presence.
She's still with me, yes. I mean, she's died physically, but not spiritually.
You still live in your mother's house?
I still do, yes.
Why do you do that? I mean, you could have any house you'd like in the whole wide world.
Well, I did buy a posh house.
I know that.
You know, but I didn't like living there because it was too lonely, but my niece lives there now.
And so you stay in the house. It's cozy, I imagine, and familiar.
I know all my neighbours and they know me.
I've read an awful lot about you in the last few days preparing for this interview. And many reporters have come across people in the pubs, people at church, and they say, you know, she's still one of us. She's still connected to us. You still go and sing karaoke at the pub, at the Crown Pub.
I like a laugh. I like a good laugh.
Susan, you could have a laugh at Carnegie Hall, but you go down to the pub. Why do you keep that up?
It's always important to keep your roots and to keep your friends. Because if you don't have that, well, you haven't got much, really.
You said that Saint Bernadette is an inspiration to you. Why?
Because I visit Lourdes.
Ah.
She's a very great inspiration to me.
What about her personality inspired you, or her example?
Well, she came from very humble beginnings. She was very much the underdog. But she ended up being a very great person in God's eyes.
Yeah. I love, and I think the whole world loved, that moment when you first burst onto the scene on Britain's Got Talent. And like Bernadette, you were underestimated. People judged you the moment you walked out. And yet when you opened that voice up and everyone heard, there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've never been given the chance before, but here's hoping it'll change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine
Like
Page.
that.
What are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from the Miserables.
Okay.
Big song.
Yeah? Yes.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
You didn't expect that, did you? Did you? No.
I dreamed of love would never die. I prayed that God would be forgiven. I was young and unafraid. When dreams are made and used and wasted, there was no ransom to be paid. No song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come with their voices soft as thunder, as they tear your hopes apart, as they turn your dreams to shame. Still I dream it come to me. And we live our lives together. But there are dreams which cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream I'd like to be, so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seems. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed.
What was that moment like for you, personally?
Well, I feel I was inspired by Our Lady, because I was up against the wall. My mother had just died. My circumstances were very dire. I'd tried for many auditions before, I never got anywhere. And I feel that she was helping me at that particular time. And that was meant to be.
I love that even in 1999, you poured all your life savings into creating a demo tape. You sent it around to places. Nothing happened. Your mother wanted you to audition for Britain's Got Talent and was certain you could win.
She actually encouraged me to do auditions for other places as well.
Oh.
Because she believed in me. You know, and my other sister Mary was a good singer as well, and I thought I'd carry on the tradition.
And what do you think she would say if she were here today, your mother, Bridget?
I think she'd be very proud of me. I think she'd be saying, you know, calm down a bit, you know, and just take it all in your stride and enjoy yourself.
But you seem to be enjoying yourself, and when you sing, there is this, it's a spirit of joy. Are you aware of that? Are you experiencing that when you sing?
Well, I'm not really aware of anything spiritual. But I just know that I give a lot of pleasure to people and they make people happy. So there must be something there that makes them happy.
You have achieved amazing things in these last few years. You've sung for Pope Benedict. You sang with your childhood idol, Donny Osmond, in Vegas.
Right, okay.
So here's my question. What was more satisfying, singing for the Pope or singing with Donny Osmond?
As they are both good celebrities, I would put them both on an equal and say they were great to work with.
Do you see yourself as a role model for the underdog?
I have to give this one a bit of thought. When you put yourself in the public eye, you are a role model, and people look up to you. It's up to you to maintain an example, like my mother did with me, so I like to think I can give an example to other people.
Why has it taken you so long, Susan Boyle, to tour America? You have yet to do this. Was it nerves? Was it uncertainty about this, what audiences would expect here?
When you do a tour, it takes a lot of preparation, and you have to do it in a measured way and at the right time. 4 years ago, or whenever, was not the right time because I didn't really feel I was ready. But I feel I'm ready now to say a big thank you to them, and this is my way of doing it.
What can we expect from the tour?
You can expect some songs you may know, some songs you may not know. You can expect to have a good time.
Why do you think the world has so embraced you? Of all the singers, there are millions of them out there. Why is Susan Boyle a performer that people not only want to come and see, but they want to hear that voice every day of their lives, in their car, at home?
Well, apart from the obvious answer, luck, I think probably it's because you get what you see.
When you look at your journey to this moment, do you see this as a mission for you? Is there a mission for Susan Boyle in all of this?
Well, God uses you in a way to really be a kind of example to people. I think this was God's way of saying, this is what you can do, Susan. This is what I have for you. I have a talent, but it's not mine, it's His. So it's His way of saying, you've got a talent, you've got to go out there and use it.
Susan Boyle's new album, Hope, hit stores on October 21st. For information on Susan's U.S. tour and how you can get tickets, visit SusanBoyleMusic.com. That is all the time we have for this week. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. Let me know what you think of tonight's show. And the links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Now, do not miss next week's show. We'll take you to the only Catholic choir boys' school in the United States. And these little powerhouses are dominating the Billboard charts right now. The boys of the St. Paul's Choir School joins us, and we'll have a special round table on that final report of the Extraordinary Synod on the Family. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. We leave you tonight with Susan Boyle singing You Raise Me Up from her new album, Hope. And boy, do we need a song right about now. Here it goes. Bye now.
My heart wouldn't be, then I am here and sing here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up till I more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be. Thank you.